Support for this podcast comes from Is Business Broken, a podcast from BU's Meirotra Institute that explores questions like, why are executives paid so much? Do they deserve it? Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Darryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Summer is here, and so are cicadas. Around this time, a brood of periodical cicadas, specifically brood 14, are emerging for the first time in 17 years. And WBUR digital news producer Katie Cole is going to tell us everything we need to know about these noisy summer insects and what makes this particular brood special. Katie, welcome back to The Common.
Thank you so much for having me, Darryl. I love to talk with you.
Oh, Katie, that means a lot. Now, last time you were here, we talked about sharks. You also did a story a little while ago about sea turtles. Now you're here to talk about bugs. Are you trying to establish the wildlife beat for WBUR or something?
I mean, listen, the news can be pretty heavy. So anytime I can get a weird animal story, that's a good day for me.
You know what? I'll take that. I'll take that for sure. So let's talk about these cicadas. Now, 17 years. They're hatched and they go immediately underground for 17 years, which feels like a very long time. What are they doing underground? How are they living like this?
It's a great question. So they're generally eating and moving around, but scientists don't actually know the extent of what they do underground because it's pretty difficult to study something that is underground for so long and also to get funding to study something that's underground for so long. But generally, they know that they're feasting, they're moving around a little bit, but they do come kind of back up every year in the same location.
And they're feasting on plant roots, tree roots.
Exactly,
Like
exactly.
Okay. And do all cicadas, do they all live underground for 17 years?
No, they do not. So periodical cicadas have different cycles. So there's 17-year cycle cicadas, like the periodicals that are emerging right now on the Cape. And this brood 14 is a very large brood. So they're emerging kind of in multiple places in the eastern United States. The annual cicadas that you hear every year around the summertime, they're sometimes known as heat bugs because when it's really hot out, you'll hear them humming all at once. They make this very distinct sound.
So with this particular brood 14, the one that's coming up in Massachusetts, what is special about them? What makes them unique?
So they're unique mostly because of the fact that they live on the Cape. So with this...
These are bougie bugs.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big swath of land that they're from. So they're in parts of Georgia, they're in Pennsylvania, they're in Ohio. But on the Cape, they live in kind of a sandier soil. Cicadas as a species don't tend to really like the sandy soil. So the ones on the Cape and then also a small area of Long Island, they both live in kind of the sandier soils, which actually makes them a little bit more vulnerable to going extinct.
So what happens when a brood or a sect of a brood goes extinct? What kind of loss is that to the environment?
So cicadas are an important part of our ecosystem. They're native to New England. They're native to the eastern United States. When they come up in these mass emergences, they're mating, they're creating new cicadas, and they die. And their bodies return nutrients to the soil, which is one way. When they lay their eggs, they actually lay them in holes in trees. They have this special appendage that they use to cut a little hole into the tree and lay their eggs into the tree. But those little holes essentially prune back some of the trees, and studies show that that's actually a very important, helpful thing for trees and for forests to kind of go through these cycles where they're cut back a little bit.
All right, well, Katie, right now, I want to take a break. But when we get back, I want to talk about what the residents can expect this summer from this brood of cicadas. So we'll be right back. And we're back with WBUR digital news producer, Katie Cole. All right, so Katie, we're talking about these cicadas. They're surfacing here in Massachusetts around the Cape after 17 years underground. So when they surface, if I happen to be in the Cape, maybe I get lucky. Somebody invites me to their beach house or something like that. And I walk around and I see a cicada. What am I going to see?
So the first thing you'll kind of see is kind of the signs that they're coming out of the ground, right? So they make these little kind of penny-sized round holes in the ground that are like perfectly round, and that's them crawling out. Sometimes there's like a little mound of mud around them. They're called mud turrets. So that's kind of the first little inklings that the cicadas are coming out. Then when they emerge, they're not fully adults yet, so they're about an inch long. They'll crawl up onto trees, and they will go through a final molt to turn into their adult form. So they shed their exoskeleton, and that's when you get these like crunchy, papery exoskeletons that like get stuck to trees and stuff. When they shed their exoskeleton, they have wings, which are newly formed, and they have bright red eyes, but they're kind of a creamy color. And then over time, their outside shell will kind of darken and harden. And then that's when they start their like mating extravaganza where they're flying around.
It's time to party.
Exactly. Trying to build the new generation of cicadas that are going to eventually then go underground, live there, and come up 17 years later.
And how long do cicadas live?
There's about 4 to 6 weeks where they're in the environment and active after they emerge. Then those adults die. And then a couple weeks later, the nymphs from the eggs hatch and they crawl back underground. But those nymphs are so small that you really likely won't notice or see them.
Man, so 17 years underground, 4 to 6 weeks on the surface, and then you die.
Exactly. It's a crazy life.
So that's what they look like. We know how long they live now. What do they sound like? This might be the most important detail.
Yeah, so they make this kind of haunting noise. It's definitely different than the kind of hum of a dog day cicada that you would hear every year. This is what they sound like. So they make this kind of like humming noise, and you hear it especially like if the sun comes out, it's a really hot day. That's when I kind of tend to hear them if I'm out and about in nature. But these periodical cicadas, they make a different sound. They're individually quieter than the dog day cicadas, but when they chorus, it makes this like massive, odd, pure toned whistling sound.
Yo.
Isn't that a little scary?
That is a little scary.
Yeah, it's a little like it sounds like a horror movie soundtrack almost.
I'm staying inside.
I mean, luckily for you, and for most people in Massachusetts, you're probably not going to hear it. These cicadas are only emerging in like one part of the state. So they're kind of emerging in Barnstable County, pretty close to the Cape Cod Canal, and on the Upper Cape. And maybe a little bit over in Plymouth County, kind of on the opposite side of the canal. Okay. So unless you're going down the Cape, you're probably not going to encounter them. This is a really unique experience, so just kind of sit back, appreciate it, watch them come up, and, let them do their thing, and they will head back underground shortly or die off shortly, and you won't have to engage with them again for over a decade.
All right, bet. Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming through to the Common and talking to us about cicadas, which is pretty cool. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks so much, Darryl. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
That's WBUR digital news producer, Katie Cole. And before we go, I have some news. Today's episode is our last. The Common ends here. After more than 2.5 years, WBUR has decided to end the show. Folks, it has been a lot of fun doing this show for you all. I am incredibly grateful to have been a part of your listening routine. And, I got to give a big shout out to everyone who stuck with us through our transition from daily to weekly. That truly means a lot. And to all of our guests, your time and insight helped anchor this show in and for Greater Boston. Thank you for your trust and partnership. in highlighting the true beauty and culture of the region. With so much pulling at your attention these days, that you all gave the show a little bit of yours each week means the world to us. And for me personally, that I got to be a regular voice in your day or week will be one of my proudest achievements. Again, thank you all. Please continue to support high-quality journalism, especially at the local level. And when I say support, I mean by listening or reading, donating, and holding your preferred newsrooms accountable to their mission. We need that now more than ever. And if you want to stay in touch, you can follow me on Instagram at Darryl C. Murphy. I'd love to hear from you. And now, for the last time, that's the show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common, which is produced by myself and the incredible Franny Monahan. It's mixed by Marquise Neal and edited by Yasmin Ammer. And our theme music is Me, from Hisu. And from the newsroom of WBUR, I'm your host, Darryl C. Murphy.